Okay, so welcome, Myrna, and I believe Claude will join us momentarily. Welcome, Claude and Guila.
Good afternoon, everybody.
Just have some quiet moments here while people are gathering. Arthur, it's good to see you. I hope you're well. Wait a minute, you're muted. I can't seem to unmute you. Can you unmute yourself? There you go.
I think I may have.
Yes, you did.
I'm going no more bananas than anyone else is.
Yeah, understandable. Well, I'm glad you could join in for this conversation today.
Oh, I've been looking forward.
Good. So we're just going to be patient here while others join us, and especially waiting for Bob Lubran.
We'll go outside. Okay, it's a name.
Oh, something is in my eyesight.
Ethel, it's wonderful to see you. Oh, your audio is not connected yet. Okay, as soon as you're ready. Charlotte, good to see you.
Good to see you too. Good to see everybody.
Yeah.
Hello. I guess it just says Adam. How are you, Ken, Rachel?
Hi, Adam. Nice to. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Oh yeah, it's yeah.
Great that you could join us today. Your dad was just telling me a little bit about your family connection with Claude.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Let's see. There we go.
So just again, welcome to everyone. We're just going to sit tight for a couple more minutes until we reach the official 12 o'clock starting time. And as people gather, it's good to see all your faces. I just appreciate knowing that people are well and able to participate despite the challenges right now. Guila, it looks like your video has stopped. I don't know if that's intentional.
That's on purpose, just for a minute.
Got it.
And I will be joining in a second.
Okay.
Well, my video will be rejoining in a second. So.
Okay.
If you want.
And there's Bob Lubran.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on here. Anyway.
So many people are joining right now. If you all don't mind, just
Yeah, so we should wait.
sit tight for just another minute. A whole bunch of people are in
Yeah,
our waiting room, and I'm just trying to
Okay.
make them.
I'll go get it.
Where is it? I'll get it.
It's downstairs. I think, or maybe it's, I don't know, maybe it's in there.
Good. And there's Sarah. Good. So, Guila and
Yes.
Bob and Claude, with your permission, I'd like to go ahead and get us started. We're right at the 12 o'clock bell here.
It didn't come
wanna-
through. I saw your
Um,
note.
So Bob, I'm going to mute you just since you're in another conversation right now. So yes, Guila, can we go ahead? Can I go ahead and?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Get started for sure.
Wonderful. So I'm
I
just
mean, I don't know if
going to
you
go ahead
are
and
there
mute
people.
everyone. I'll just continue to welcome people in from the waiting room as they come, but I think we're ready, and want to express my appreciation to all of those who are able to join today and who have been patiently waiting for us to begin. There are more coming in. So I feel so aware as we begin today that most of our Zoom gatherings, we've tried to begin with some little bit of music or visiting, a little bit of light connecting with one another, which is a wonderful way to stay in touch. But already today feels like it has a different tone to it. And of course, the reason for our gathering has a different feel to it than a kind of a celebratory Shabbat or a learning session. And so just begin by acknowledging that today is a sacred day, a holiday on the Jewish calendar, Yom HaShoah, established by the state of Israel after the state was created, after the state was established. And in particular, I want to acknowledge and remind all of us that the Israeli name for this day is Yom HaShoah VeHaGvura, that at least for Israelis, this is a day of remembering the Shoah and also the heroes, the heroism that was displayed by those who lived through it. And I would like to suggest that heroism, that sense of tenacity and some good fortune and some extreme faith and strength in the future is something that is the legacy of all of those who came through the Holocaust. Not only the true heroes, say, of the Warsaw Ghetto, but all of the survivors, the few who are still with us. Today, we have the real honor of turning to one such person in our own community. And I believe so far as I can tell, everyone on this call is part of the Adat Shalom community, but if I've missed someone and you're joining us from outside of our synagogue community, you're most welcome. We're happy to have you with us. It's our honor to turn with special attention and love to Claude Kacser to hear his story and his insights about this unique part of Jewish history. Before we turn to Claude, I want to turn to Bob Lubran, who with his brother Bernie and with several others, serves as a volunteer for the JCRC, the Jewish Community Relation Council Door Lador program. And Bob, we'll turn to you first to just share a little bit about your work with that program, and then ask you to turn to Guila Siegel, Guila Franklin Siegel, who is with us today, not only as, of course, a very dear Adat Shalom member, but also as the Associate Director of the JCRC. So Bob, first to you.
Thank you very much.
If I could just ask everyone else to please stay muted so that we can hear the speakers clearly when they do speak.
It's, of course, an honor to be here with you and especially with my dear friend Claude, who I've got to know well over the years. JCRC is pleased to be collaborating with Adat Shalom as part of the JCRC Door Lador program of intergenerational conversations. The program today is part of our Yom HaShoah commemoration and includes 10 conversations taking place among hundreds of teens, adults, and Holocaust survivors throughout the greater Washington, D.C. region. For decades, JCRC of Greater Washington has had the great honor and responsibility to organize and host our community-wide Yom HaShoah commemorations. Faced now with an unprecedented healthcare crisis, we've worked hard to be resourceful and flexible to find alternative means to bridge the physical divides that have been imposed upon us. Thank you to our survivors and to all of you who are joining us to hear their testimonies and affirm that we will carry on their legacies. In the midst of a global pandemic, we must maintain our obligations to one another and our responsibility to remember. Thank you to Adat Shalom for making this, Adat Shalom staff for making this happen, and we look forward to future collaborations. My involvement with JCRC and the Yom HaShoah evolves out of my family background. My father was an immigrant from Germany in late 1938, while his parents and his sister and brother-in-law were not able to get out and ultimately perished during the war. My father came to the United States, became a citizen, was recruited into the US Army, and ended up in a military intelligence program where he ended up returning to Europe in late 1944 through 1945, serving with US Army and military intelligence. And the interesting part of that is that he was trained in a camp not far from here called Camp Ritchie, Maryland, which is actually near the Camp David in the northern part of Maryland. And it turns out there were about 20,000 American soldiers. Many of them were Jewish, not all, but many. And many of them spoke foreign languages. My father was fluent in German and English. And they became a critical part of US Army's involvement in the war and helped save many lives. And my brother and I got interested in this whole kind of secret effort for which very little was written. And then a German documentarian did a film about 10 or 15 years ago and created a lot more interest. And long and short, that there has been a website created by my brother and a lot of activity going on to honor the US soldiers, particularly Jewish soldiers who served in World War II during that campaign. So with that, it's my honor to introduce Claude Kacser. Many of you know is a professor of physics at the University of Maryland. And I'm going to take just a minute to introduce Guila Franklin Siegel, who's going to talk a little bit more about this whole activity.
Thank you so much, Bob. Everyone can hear me? Yes, I hope so. Good, I'm seeing nods. I feel like I spend my whole life on Zoom, as many of you do. I want to take a minute, first of all, to thank Bob so much and his brother Bernie, who are kind of the unsung heroes working behind the scene to make our Door Lador program happen. And I will tell you that every year when we do our Door Lador program, I would say we probably get maybe 100 people in a room, and we consider that a very powerful experience. When we all went into lockdown, I will tell you that Bob and Bernie pivoted with us on a dime and worked with us without missing a beat to help our survivors be connected virtually with people in our community. And we're so grateful to them. We call them the Lubran brothers, kind of like the Property Brothers. We are very grateful and probably don't say that enough. So I'm here to say that to you now, Bob, and thank you so much. You know, necessity is the mother of invention. And I can say that this week, through these door-to-door sessions that my colleague Sara Winkelman, who is on this call with us, and Bob and Bernie have put together, will probably reach close to 1,000 people, teenagers and adults in the region. And for those of you who were able to watch the community commemoration on Sunday, first of all, thank you for joining us. And second of all, again, we usually get about 1,000 people. The commemoration has currently, as of now, been viewed by over 10,000 people online. So there can't be any redeeming quality or essence to what we're going through now. But it is true that we've been able to touch many more people. So I thank you for that. And we're very grateful to Claude for being with us, not only being with us today, but for sharing of himself with us. It's entirely possible to daven, to worship in a sanctuary next to somebody for years and years and never know the full story of their journey. And I can tell you that Claude and Linda even sit in kind of the same area in the sanctuary that Nathan and I do. And yet I've learned so much more about his life journey over the last weeks. And so without further ado, except I do want to thank, as always, Rabbi Chazan Rachel for her partnership and her sensitivity, for being a wonderful JCRC board member, a wonderful officer of the Washington Board of Rabbis, and a wonderful partner. So I'm going to turn it over to Claude. And Claude, first I'm going to...
Guila, excuse me for interrupting. Thank you for your warm welcome for all of us. Folks, I'm just going to butt in here for a second. I need to just do one quick muting of everyone, and then Guila and Claude, I will unmute you again just to make sure we're all on the same page. And I'm getting messages from a few of you, as I'm noticing myself, that most of us are not on screen. And I don't know if that's a Zoom issue or a personal choice, but if it's a personal choice, if you're willing to show yourself, if you're able and willing, it helps create a nice sense of community for us, which is something we want to especially cultivate in this time that we're separated from one another. So if you're able to activate your video, we'd be grateful. I'm going to just one more time mute everyone, and then once again, Guila and Claude, I will unmute you so we can hear your voices. Bear with me just a second. Or Guila, there.
Okay,
and
we good?
You're unmuted, and Claude, there. We should be okay now. Thank you. And
Beautiful.
Thank you for all the good faces we're now seeing.
Lovely. Okay, so Claude, if you could start off by sharing with everyone a bit more. I think people maybe have a general sense of what the term child survivor means, but what your experience has been as a child survivor, how that connects you with other child survivors, and how child survivors, even the uniqueness of their experience within the range of the survivor population, and then share with us a little bit about your story as well. I know we would be grateful.
Thank you, and that's sort of kind of overwhelming list of things. When people think of survivors, most people immediately gravitate to the image of someone behind barbed wire, wearing striped pajamas, undernourished, nearly skeleton-like sometimes. But adults from the ages of 20, 25, 30, 40, 50. Very few, 60, 70, I'm talking about at that time, because they had been effectively murdered simply by the situation. And an important aside, no one was killed, they were all murdered, it was intentional. My great uncle didn't wake up one morning in the barracks at Auschwitz. He'd been murdered, it was the intent. But that's an aside. But that's the sort of person one is thinking of normally. There's a whole other population of child survivors. People who were children, starting from a baby of 6 months who used to be in our community, up to someone age 16, which is sort of the nominal cutoff for this, who were children and somehow managed to survive. If they were unfortunate enough to get to a concentration camp, which is a bad name, really means either a work camp or an extermination camp, or sometimes both. If they were unfortunate enough to get to such a camp, they would be immediately murdered. Very few children did manage to survive in the concentration camp. The Buchenwald 200. The child survived outside. And I want to start with the general sense of. I'm going to give you some friends of mine. This is what I know them. And I should say survivors are essentially all dead. And child survivors are dying. I have a photograph up on the wall of 2 different child survivor friends of mine who are dead. It's your job, you're my door. So I don't see any children there, but it's your job to carry on the message. I'll be dead soon. Okay. I won't give you their names. A boy who at 6 months was given by his parents to a shepherd in Greece to save him. And the shepherd raised him from the age of 6 months up to about the age of 2 years. And then the war was over. A girl who at age 12 was hidden in nunneries, girls' school, boarding school. She was Jewish, or the other kids, girls, were Christian. She had to learn the catechism. She probably had to learn a new name. She survived. I'm talking of survivors. The same girl at another time was hidden.
Claude, excuse me 1 second. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I'm getting messages that the sound is not clear. Could you, if you can, possibly speak up a little bit so that people have an easier...
My problem is my microphone is under the desk. Thank you. Okay. Same girl who was hidden with probably another 20 or 30 kids, boys and girls, by a Jewish hidden organization, OSA, in France. Again, a girl at 12 who hid with her mother in a potato shed for 2 or 3 years, was fed secretly by the farmer whose potato shed it was, and who used to carry a potato on the passenger seat of her car as a memory of the goodness she received from potatoes and potato shed. A woman, this one I'll name, Louise, who some of you may have seen on Sunday, who told her story. She, with her family at age 6 months, in an attic in Holland, and like Anne Frank, except that this family was fortunate, again, fed, kept secret. Someone who, with his family, went from Belgium to northern occupied France, down to southern France, over the Pyrenees with his family, to Spain, to Portugal. When I say over the Pyrenees, I mean hiking or already climbing. The Pyrenees aren't just little hills like we have around here. And then ultimately getting on a boat to America. That could be important. The Kindertransport, you probably heard about them. The British government very magnanimously, incredibly, passed a law right after Kristallnacht saying we will let in Jewish, I don't know if it said Jewish in the bill, children, but without their parents, disregarding all visa requirements that someone had to guarantee their livelihood or whatever. So a £50 surety guarantee had to be paid, which the Jewish community did, and the Jewish community also found housing. That was the only nation that consciously changed the setup to allow some survivors to survive. And then that gets to me. Before I get to me, no, I'll get to me first. I was born in Paris in 1934 of an Austrian father, a German mother, which made me Austrian, which made me, and this is important, an enemy of England when I arrived in England. Because I went from Paris to Vienna, Austria in 1935 as a baby, then to England in 1936, age 2. Except my name all the time was Claude Kacser, because I was French. The family was multilingual. They were living in Paris when I was born. They were living in Paris when they courted and married. So I was in a French household. Even in London, I went to a French nursery school. And some of you may notice my French R, which I've never gotten rid of. My accent is a blend of French, American, English in that order, or stirred up delightfully. We are in England in 1936. The war against Poland starts against in 1939. Poland is overrun in one month. Apologies. Is it possible to record this? Is it being recorded? Excellent.
We are recording this, yes.
Excellent. Then, from the point of view of Western Europe, nothing happens. A lot happens in Poland. Then comes the incredible blitzkrieg in May 1940. The Germans go rapidly through Belgium, Holland, Luxembourg, into northern France. Chamberlain is kicked out in England. Churchill comes in on May 10th. That happened on May 10th. Churchill very soon notices these enemy aliens, those people living in England who are primarily refugees, who have German or Austrian nationality. The enemy. They're aliens, they're not British. They're sort of friendly, most of them. So they're friendly enemy aliens, which is an impossibility. And my father is interned with about another 24,000 such people behind barbed wire on the Isle of Man, which is a residential or holiday place. So you put him in hotels and stuff, though people having holidays at that time. My mother is now alone with an adorable 6.5-year-old. He comes up quite often, that's me. And there is a very real threat that England is going to be invaded. Churchill knows when to make a speech. And when he makes a speech, we will fight on the beaches, he is telling the English that you will be fighting on the beach. My mother gets it. My mother always got it. And my mother even knew somehow, as everyone knew, from Mein Kampf, published in 1920 and still available, that Hitler was going to do bad things to the Jews. He stated slightly different things, but you got the message, and you also got the message that he was going to exterminate, if you read carefully. My mother, very fearful for herself and for her husband, but most fearful of all for me, her adorable 6.5-year-old, made an absolutely incredible sacrifice. She decided to send me by myself at 6.5 to America to the care of a distant bachelor relative. She knew she might die in the war. She was saving me. An incredible sacrifice that brings tears to my eyes now. I don't know if I could have done it. Yes, she was saving me, knowing she might be murdered. But she has to advertise in the London Times for a caring couple who will be willing to escort this adorable 6.5-year-old on the ship to America. A certain remuneration. This is my green card. Which I got at age 6.5 when I arrived in New York City. If you look at that face, the photograph isn't a good photo. I think you see lots of emotions. And I've never said this before, lots of heroism. This little boy is scared shitless of what's going to happen next. and yet somehow he will survive. And as an aside, it's only people who had tenacity and resilience who survived in the camps. Child survivors were safe until they were caught. And every day of their lives hidden or whatever, if they were in occupied country, which is all the child survivors except for the last two, the Kindertransporter. Every day they knew they mustn't be found out, and that they might be found out and they might be murdered. They would be murdered that day that they were found out. That's rather different than being in a concentration. There you're in a hell of a position. But if you survive that far, you may make it to the next day or the next day or the next day. That little boy is nearly close to tears as well. I took an art therapy designed for Holocaust survivors, designed for child Holocaust survivors, an art therapy workshop with very good prompting. And I drew from my subconscious a picture that I'd never had in my conscious. My mother and me, I very small, clinging desperately to her legs. She, much bigger, physically pushing me away. Physically pushing me away. Hands up, pushing away. And both of us with tears. That is how I must have felt. Except that I don't have any memories up to the age of 8. So I didn't know until that art therapy class 2 or 3 years ago, that that's how I had felt at the time. I could have imagined it. I did imagine it. I didn't imagine the feeling of being pushed away by your own parent. What a horrible feeling. I didn't imagine her tears. I didn't, until fairly recently, fully become aware of her infinite self-sacrifice. I ask you, could you be able to send your child away from yourself in a totally uncertain world? Well, back to me, and I may be taking too long, but I hope yes, I am taking too long. Sorry.
Oh, not at all, not at all.
Let me go on. Okay. So I'm on this ship with these pages for a certain remuneration. No memories. I arrive in New York, age 6½, October 1940, and I am introduced to this 51-year-old confirmed bachelor, who I'm afraid didn't really know what a child was. I didn't even know how to relate to him at all. Fortunately, he had a rather heavy Germanic Teutonic sister-in-law who told him to take me to the pediatrician, told me to get me glasses and all that sort of stuff. He had to put me in small boarding school. 12 months round. With another 29 other similar waifs. We each told each other our stories, of course. And I don't know if we really responded with horror Oh, that's your story, that's your story, that's my story. That's the way it is. Children don't know how it might otherwise have been. The little girl who spoke on Sunday, 6 months old when she gets to the Dutch attic, 2 or 3 years old when she gets liberated. She doesn't understand the outside. She doesn't know that you can run and play, which is what you do naturally. I don't know how it's natural, but it is. That you can shout, you can have fun. She didn't know that. Her brother, who was slightly older when he went in, was angry as hell. Back to me. So there we are, always together. At the end of the war, I go back to England, and England has not been invaded. My parents have not been murdered. That's the difference between me and most of the other child survivors. Nearly all child survivors ultimately learned that their parents had been murdered. Some of them made great permanent connections with their saviors. I left out, I think, one important person, a friend in Paris, age 4, and his little sister, age 2, who were adopted into a French Catholic family. Oh, these are cousins or something or other. In Poland, when a little girl brought into a Polish Catholic family, this is a cousin from the country, we're looking after her, she's part of the family. Of course, she isn't, but she has to blend. Key questions throughout. Did the child get love? Was the child with his or her parents? Some of those stories, they were with their parents. I was not with my parents. I wrote letters to England, and my mother and father wrote letters back to me. Oh, dear mother and father, how are you doing? I'm fine. The weather is hot. We went swimming yesterday. I don't know if you've ever received letters like that from camp, but remember, I am 6 to 11. But sooner or later, I don't know who I'm writing to. They just become strange concepts. My mother writing back certainly knows exactly who she's writing to. She has a total image. When I get back to England, I don't know how I felt about meeting my mother. This woman is my mother. Hug her. She hugged me, definitely. I'm going to stop my story there because I know Guila has some things, but I want to highlight some aspects.
Claude, thank you so much. And it's so moving to really, it's one thing to understand factually that there were child survivors and that there were adult survivors. It's another thing to understand the long-term impact of that and how it's imprinted. So I wanted, following up on that, you and I talked a little bit yesterday about the differences in how child and adult survivors were perceived and treated, both in terms of reparations and in terms of just the Holocaust narrative after the war until now, and some of your efforts in that regard in terms of reaching out to and supporting other child survivors. Could you share a little bit about that?
Yes. So apologies, I noticed it's already 12:39, and we were hoping for questions from you. You may not get your chance.
And we will get that. We'll get a few minutes.
Okay. I didn't even think of myself My mother didn't even think of me to tell me that I was a Holocaust child survivor. I was just one of those infinite number of waifs, flotsam and jetsam of the war. Child survivors in Europe, of course, knew they were child survivors of the Holocaust. By the way, when you say child survivor, it's really child survivor of the Holocaust, Holocaust child survivor. The word Holocaust has got to be in there. We were not adults. We had not gone through Erickson's stages of development to become a person who, in his own right, could cope with trauma and all that sort of stuff. We were children, as I say, from age 6 months up. The 6-month-old doesn't remember anything between age 6 months and 2 years when he was liberated. But it's his subconscious remembers. The trauma is always there. That type of trauma, I find this difficult to say, and I don't want to, is worse than any trauma a functioning adult would ever. No, to see your parents garroted or something or other, whatever. You've seen all these films, you know about it. That's trauma. That's trauma as seen as an adult. We children had trauma when we were not ready, able to deal with it. And yet we had to. A huge difference. I'll get to the historic. Recently, after a great deal of delicate negotiations, politics, diplomacy, the German government, who has been very good about paying reparation to this class and that class and the other class, the German government made an award to all Holocaust child survivors of 2,500 euros. A petty token. As far as I'm concerned, a very significant token. In recognition of the extra trauma, incurable trauma that children had gone through compared with that. Only a small token, 2,500 euros. Now it's probably, it may be as much as $3,000. But a recognition, to me, that is enormous. I am recognized, and the German government has recognized me. I mean, the Germans now know this, and I now know that I'm recognized. For technical reasons, I myself never got that 2,500 euros that many of my friends did. One of my friends, the baby, 6-month-old shepherd, was so angry at being told about this. It's an insult, 2,500 euros. I had to calm him down, and about a month later, I managed to persuade him to apply, and he was pleased to get it. He ultimately got it. The Germans need to know the Germans need the record to know the record. Okay, but back to America. The adult survivors became noticeable first. And movies about them were made. And they organized. And they are the ones who ultimately became, some of them adequately wealthy, to endow the Holocaust Museum and things like that. We child survivors only became somehow aware that we existed and were different and organized. And there is a World Federation of Jewish Holocaust Child Survivors. An aside, we're all getting old. The survivors themselves can't keep up the Holocaust Museum anymore. There aren't enough survivors around. The child survivors are getting very old. And no one is able to keep up the World Federation of Child Survivors. It's the same people desperately keep it going and fizzle out and die and whatever. The story will be over, and the story of the child survivors are going to be over very, very soon.
Claude,
It's not up to you.
I want to open it up for questions, but I also know that when we spoke yesterday, it was very important to you to be able to share with everybody your perspective, your motivation for doing this, and what to you in your heart never again means, and why you invest of yourself to share in such a personal and intimate way.
Well, firstly, neither I nor my mother thought of me as a Holocaust child survivor. In about the year 2000, an American Jewish woman, no connection with the Holocaust, asked herself the question, hey, the British did that noble thing, the kinder transport, that people know about. Was there a similar thing done by the Americans? No. The American government in Congress, there was a bill to rescue children. Didn't get out of committee. The State Department desperately, with full anti-Semitic purpose, kept Jewish refugees out, Jewish child refugees out. So this woman wrote letters to the Washington Post. Hey, I'm looking for kids like this. Well, I suppose I came from England to America to slave Hitler. Yeah, oh well. I wrote to her. She managed by desperate study of ship manifests, this, that, and the other, to find a list of 1,400 such children who fled Hitler to America by themselves. She called up the 1,000 children because at the beginning of mid-time of her work, that's how many. You can look us up on Wikipedia, 1,000 children. She invited me to give a talk at her international conference, and I said, oh, wait a bit. You know, my story is so atypical. The Nazis were never within 50 miles of me. Do I count? And she said, yes, you count. And I gave my talk, and I realized I did count, and I met others, and I started going. By the way, I've always known I was Jewish, because Hitler told me I was Jewish at age 6.5. But I haven't been much of a Jew until fairly recently, and that my conversion is up to my wife, or due to my wife, Linda. And I'm not shalom. But then I began understanding. And then I began to start doing this and feeling this is my duty, doing door to door, being a docent at the Holocaust Museum, desperately trying to publicize our existence in the Holocaust Museum, who doesn't quite know whether we count, though I've gotten us into the encyclopedia. And my purpose is, when I do this, is not history, but this. I don't think you can see it. Oh, maybe you can. Zachor. Never again. Well, Zachor, remember, but never again. And to me, it's much more global than just Jews. It's everyone. And it's not remember the history and somehow whatever. but it is now, and it is a cause, and all of you, and this is why I'm giving this talk, all of you are required by your Judaism to look out at genocides that are going on now and doing something about it. That's the end of my tour at the Holocaust Museum, even though I'm not allowed to do that. At the Holocaust Museum, I'm only allowed to talk about the artifacts. Who cares about the history? It's about now. Therefore, never again, never. At the moment, the Rohingyas in Burma, or a new name now, remarkably, there is a trial going on now to protect the Rohingya. And there is an order from the International Court of Justice saying, oh, you Burmese, don't you dare do anything further in your genocide while the court goes through its proceedings. Nonsense. And it's absurd. There have only been a very few interventions that have been successful to prevent or stop a genocide. And one is very remarkable because it fits in here. Clinton, when president, Bosnia, Srebrenica, Elie Wiesel talks to Clinton directly and says, remember the Holocaust. You must not allow this to happen. The world had been allowing this to happen for many years. So Clinton decides, okay, I will send in one wing of airplane who will strafe the bad guys. Just one day. And bad guys quit. Okay. You have got to stop genocide. You've got to notice genocide. You've got to, when they start, and do something. If nothing else, just sit in the lobby of the Hart Senate building. Okay. That's it.
Oh, Claude, thank you. I think that your words are particularly poignant on a day when we've just heard that the U.S. has stopped all immigration. I think the fact that that happened on Yom HaShoah is particularly poignant. I'm going to pass the baton over to Rabbi Chazan Rachel to field some questions from those who are with us today for the discussion. And Claude, thank you again.
Thank you both, Claude, for your powerful words today, and Guila for helping us to find our way into this conversation. I just want to point out Rabbi Fred's excellent comments in the chat box here, just relating to some of the things Claude was just saying. We had hoped to leave some space open at the end of our hour here just to see if there are questions. And I saw that it's either Helen or Seema, one of you was just asking earlier in the narrative as Claude was describing his own, his younger years, his childhood. Seema or Helen, one of you was asking about Claude's father and just how his life unfolded. Maybe even Claude, if you're comfortable saying how it unfolded with you. Is there anything you'd like to add?
He was interned. He happened to, unfortunately, be a stereotypical Viennese neurotic Jew. So he did not take to internment. My uncle somehow was different, and oh well, this is what happened. And my uncle was a very important person in my life. My father, Churchill interned the refugees. When news of this got out, really, about 4 months later, there was a debate in Parliament, like Congress. And the debate said, this is outrageous. It's got to be. even though in England, Churchill is in Parliament and the head of the cabinet, yet Parliament said, stop this. It was stopped. So my father was interned maybe 5-6 months. However, undoing the internment of 24,000 people who were completely disrupted from their lives isn't so easy. It took a few months and a lot of confusion. And of course, people had to find new jobs. And then my father started the war work. And when I got back to England, folks, it turns out that they were divorced. I hadn't been told this. Which I think is a good thing. I don't think you tell everything to everyone all the time. I don't, okay. So he's not part of my life. Yes, I went on visitation for 24 hours over the weekend. This was, remember, a long, long time ago when father's rights and all that were less.
Mm-hmm.
If you get divorced, please let the kids see the father. That's the end of my answer to that, father.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm pausing only because I think there are some internet glitches going on today, and it's hard to exactly know when a sentence is finished. Just want to pause here and see if there are any other questions before we close this powerful time that we've had with Claude. There's a little bit of space here, and Claude, I don't know if you can see some of the comments of appreciation that are coming in to the chat box.
No, I can't. I find it very confusing.
We'll be sure to capture them for you so that you can see them. I know it's hard to manage different spaces at once, but there's a lot of appreciation, being focused on you right now, Claude, especially.
But any questions?
I think that your words have been very full for us today, and have really given us a much bigger portrait, a much richer portrait. I think, as Guila said at the outset, we're used to being together for services and other gatherings at the synagogue, and your face and your presence are a wonderful part of that. And yet somehow, even as the years have unfolded, I think most of us didn't know this fuller background. And so we're very grateful to you, Claude, for sharing so fully.
Let me interrupt. I want to
for
say,
helping us to see.
I want to say something very important.
Okay.
I was hell of this trauma between the ages of 6.5 and 11, and then all went on perfect. No, it didn't. This trauma, the trauma for any child survivor, may get in some sense healed or scarred over or whatever, but the scar is always there throughout their lives.
Yeah.
In some way or another affects them lives. My whole personality, my whole life path, my first divorce, definitely my first divorce, are very hugely caused, I won't say 100%, but 50% caused by my being a Holocaust. By my being a Holocaust child, my whole life. Fortunately, I found you.
He was here.
But that was very late in my life. She's also brought me to Judaism.
Claude, I'm sorry. I'm just having some sound issues myself, and so I'm only hearing the last few things, and I want to be careful not to interrupt you.
I'm done.
Yeah, but I do hear your extremely powerful message about trauma, and as many of us know, unfortunately, the effects of those childhood experiences that stay with us throughout our lives. So thank you for giving testimony today, for helping us uphold this commitment that we have to remembering and to remembering by witnessing. Thank you again to Guila and to Bob Lubran for helping build up this program through the JCRC and for supporting us today. I'd like to end. Oh, Guila, were you going to say?
Can I add one quick thing?
Please,
Very quick.
yeah.
It really ties in this whole conversation about child survivors of the Holocaust. On Thursday night, Sara Winkelman and I are moderating a book discussion with the author Jennifer Rosner on her new novel, The Yellow Bird Sings, which is it's about a child survivor and her experiences during the war. It's a very fast read, especially if you're a Kindle reader. You don't have to wait for it to be delivered. So there's information about that on the JCRC website. And if you're on our email blast, we'll be sending out another reminder about that this afternoon. Thank you.
Great. Thank you.
Let me
Thank you
say
so
one
much.
more thing, if I may. Apologies. Thank you for being here to listen to me. Gratifies me enormously. It is my purpose to tell people. The regular door, I get to tell 9 people. At the Holocaust Museum, for some reason, I only get to tell 3 or 4 or 5 people when I do a tour. I say, please, please give me 7 people, because then, my payoff is so much higher. But they won't. So in any case, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Claude. Again, really appreciating your words here today, your presence, and we wish you continued good health, you and Linda. I think we see a little bit of Linda's face there. Just want to express our deep appreciation to both of you. I'd like to end today just with a little bit of familiar words and melody in honor of Yom HaShoah v'Hagvura. And hopefully if I do this right, you'll be able to see these familiar words. If you would please join me in honor of Claude and all of the survivors who are still with us, the ones who are in our memory, and for the commitment to continue to tell this story going forward. Please join me from your place. Eli, Eli, shelo yigamer leolam, acho v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, v'rak hashamayim, Gizat ha'adam, acho v'hayam, rishru shel hamayim, v'rak hashamayim, tfilat ha'adam. Thank you all. Thanks to everyone for joining in today.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you all.
Thank you, Claude.
Thank you, Claude.
Thank you, Claude. Thank you, Guila. Thank you, Rachel.
Thank you, Guila.
Beautiful.
Rachel.
Beautifully done, Claude. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Claude.
Yes, Claude.
Thanks,
Amazing.
Claude. Thank you so much. Love you.
Thank you, Papa. Love you.
Aww.
Hillary's there.
Wonderful.
Claude, thank you, Guila.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thank you, Bob. Thank you, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Be well.
Yes.
Bye.
Yasher
Stay
Koach
healthy.
all. Thank you.
I'm crying. It's very moving. It's very educating.
I found you.
Thank you, everyone. Great turnout.
At any point that you want to share what it feels like to share this? Thank you.
I'm trained that I have achieved my purpose. And that's what I'm very gratified. And yes,
oh, the microwave's on.
I have tears in my eyes, but I think mainly because my love has. It's been a long, long journey in my life to get to a place where I could let myself feel happy, let myself do true loving. A very long journey. With the help from a few therapists and friends.
And many adult children.
Well, it was a real gift for us to hear you today, Claude, even through the sound issues that we were having.
Well, thank you. And thank you for this opportunity.
It's a gift. It's a huge
gift. It's a gift to me.
Mm.
I get angry, by the way, with the JCRC for not being able to find me enough schools. I go to schools.
Claude, I've known you for over 10 years now. And
More than that.
This is Bruce. Yeah. Okay, and I've seen how you have progressed and followed along on this road. I am amazed to see how far you've come along and that you've been able to share this with all of us. It is really important, but also for yourself, that you have a much better understanding of your parents, of yourself, and how you have evolved. It's really, thank you.
And Bruce is a dear friend. He says this on every anniversary of Claude's birthday. That's good.
Let me remark again. I only knew I was a Holocaust child survivor in the year 2001.
Mm-hmm.
Made a difference.
Yes.
And it made a huge difference to me. It gave me an identity, and slowly that identity has overwhelmed me so that you get this.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Folks, you're all welcome to stay and continue visiting. I have to say goodbye myself, but I will leave the Zoom room open for you. And thank you again, Claude and Linda.
Yes.
Everyone be well.
Possible, Rachel.
Hey, Mocha. Smile.
Yay.
I want to hear some reaction from Fred.
Grateful, and you know, there's no judging of a story, right? It's your story, and you tell it well and powerfully, and uniquely, right? And that's the reason why people need to keep hearing multiple stories, especially from people that they already know. Right? There's something, I hope, that feels different and powerful about telling it to so many, primarily Adat Shalomers on this, right? Different from going into a school or getting a random group at the museum. And, you know, I saw in the chat someone say they've known you for all this time, and every time they hear you tell any piece of the story, they learn something new. Right? I feel exactly that way. And I'm grateful to know more about your story, more than I knew, and I'm someone who already knew large pieces of it, but also for the perspective that you give. And that's why I underlined the pieces at the end about the nativism and the limited number of people who came to this shore, and your beautiful answer to Gila's question about what never again means to you. And it's invaluable. And I'm grateful that we have this, and I'm grateful that it's recorded. And despite the sound issues, this lives on just like the Spielberg archives and everything at USHMM and Yad Vashem. And this is a welcome entry into those ranks. So thank you.
Let me tell you something which distresses me, disturbs me, confuses me, and yet is very sensible. They're making what they call hologramic, three-dimensional images. Current, living survivors. They recording them with all possible questions. They're using artificial intelligence. And I've met one of these ghosts. I think he was still alive, but I've met his hologram. And he is remarkably real.
Mm-hmm.
And his AI at that point wasn't that good. So when I asked him a typical Claudian convoluted question, he broke down and gave some pat answer to a different. He caught one or two words in what I said, and he managed to go on. But for most of the questions that people asked, he gave meaningful, real answers that he had previously given in life.
Yeah.
His face moved and his mouth opened and closed. And I suppose in time, there will be hundreds of him scattered around all sorts of Holocaust museums. And he will tell us. It's weird.
I think it's new and weird to us. You can imagine in just 10 or 20 years, the technology will be such that that's routine. And how beautiful that the technology emerged in time to capture survivors' stories. So it's, there's a high bar for us, but for our grandchildren, it's survivors will be the oldest generation that they can do that for. And what a gift to the future that is, even if it weirds us out in real time.
Thank you for that.
All this talking about children, I just worry so much about the children of the immigrants who we have imprisoned, and just can't stop thinking about the trauma that they're experiencing now and will all their lives for a needless situation. It should never happen. Didn't need to happen. No good purpose. So we pray for them. We got to get them out. We still haven't succeeded.
Right.
So his work is done.
Claude, I want to add to something that you said when you came here, when you were 6.5 years old. I came to New York when I was 5, yes, with my parents, and I have a whole different story as to how they survived and we got here. But when I was 3 days in this country, in New York, I got lost in New York City. Yeah.
And you spoke no English.
Oh, I did not speak any English. And I decided not to speak at all. There was a lot of Yiddish going around. Well, I was picked up by what I thought was 2 older women. Later they said, I thought they were older women.
They were older than you.
Who brought me to a police officer, who brought me to a deli, and I remember this. I refused to speak, but surely the police officer and the deli spoke Yiddish, but he gave, and I didn't speak. I decided, no, I'm not speaking. But they gave me a candy bar, a chocolate candy bar. I remember that. And then later, my parents told me how we reunited, but I don't remember that part. I remember the candy bar in the deli. And, there's a lot more to that. But I'm a child survivor, too. There's a lot of stories. Thank you.
Thank you, Marco, for that.
Yeah. Malka, have you written that down?
Yeah, well, I actually interviewed my parents about 20 years before they died, and with a terrible video camera and all that. And my son followed my dad around for 2 years and made a movie, Cooking with Zadie. So he's got that. And yeah, we written down, we've got bits and pieces, but yes, I think it would be good to write more.
You should be interviewed.
Yeah, including a distillation that lots of people can read, as well as access to the longer stuff that those of us who are family would definitely want to hear. So thank you for all that. Also, speaking of children, I see Hillary unmuted. So, hey.
That's my daughter.
Yeah.
That's my father.
Yeah.
I think that's
Anything you want to add?
I think it was really meaningful. I've seen my father do this a number of times, but I think it was really meaningful to do it with, like you said, Rabbi Fred, family, you know, with you guys, with this particular community, you know, really long-standing relationships.
And I may say that I did it more thoroughly, more open, more than normally I had the opportunity to do. And so you got the inside scoop. That drawing with my mother shoving me away from my subconscious.
That was at a workshop in Berlin when child survivors had their
annual convention, which moves around. And it was at that convention in Berlin.
Yes.
By the way, some child survivors were not willing to go to a convention in Berlin.
Yeah.
I found it very strange that it was in Berlin, but I went, and behind the scenes, there was these negotiations going on. And at the conference, they told us about the 2,500.
But they really put the red carpet out for us. They welcomed us incredibly. From the mayor on up, they all welcomed us. It was amazing.
Yeah. So the Germans have been very good about recognizing and making reparations and all of that. Yes, they only have a limited budget. 2,500 euros is really not very much. I would have preferred 10,000. But
that's not enough.
No.
Right.
You know, there's always the statement that you can never fully recompense.
Yeah,
but in any case, they recognize at all as a separate important issue the extra trauma that could not be repaired.
All right.
Okay, so I get heated.
They recognized. That's big. It's like an apology, but we won't go there either. That's
okay, so long.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Adat Shalom made him blossom, honestly.
No, my wife made me blossom.
But I love Adat Shalom. I couldn't have done it.
It was a team effort.
We're going off.
All right. Thank you so much.
Love you.
Blessing.
Shalom. Ta-da.
Okay. Thanks.
Can we get that recording, or what are you going to do with the recording, Rabbi Fred?
Hopefully we're going to get it onto our website where it will live with a URL in relative perpetuity.